Hi, welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith. Welcome to all of you who consider yourselves Americans as opposed to citizens of the global entity. And that includes welcome to all of our friends, our brethren and sistren around the world in Europe and Canada and Mexico and Australia and New Zealand and everywhere all of you folks who believe in freedom and personal liberty, on which the United States of America and many of your own countries were initially founded. Here we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk about getting America back to where it needs to be and how we're going to do that. I was holding off, for those of you who have wondered why there hasn't been anything up here for a while. I was holding off until the inauguration, which would have been the perfect time to restart this channel. But something came up today that just made me realize I needed to start back today. So I hope, first off, let me ask you a couple of things. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please like the video. Please ring the bell so you get the notifications when it comes on. And please share this with your friends. And watch this first and then see if you like it and then share it with as many people as you can. We're going to cover a lot different stuff here than we do over on integrative preparedness. The more people, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and the more people doing it, the better and the easier it's going to be. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. But if we don't get started at it, it's going to be impossible. Many people have made over the years the issue and the statements of how sad, how horrible the so-called Civil War was. I say that so-called Civil War because if you've heard me speak before, it was not a civil war. This isn't the time to talk about that, but it was a time that they say set family against family, brother against brother, father against son, neighbors against neighbors, and it was a horrible war, made more horrible by the fact that it was unnecessary and brought about by the oppression of one government over a foreign country. Okay, we'll get to that sometime. Maybe some of you are aware of that. Maybe some of you know that. Many of you probably just know about that war, what you've heard about in history class in high school and college, and let me tell you now, you've been misled, but maybe we'll get to that on another time. Something came up today that reminded me of that, and this is just an unbelievable, well, perhaps not unbelievable, but an extremely sad situation illustrated by this article that I'm going to read. It's out of the Washington Post. I'm going to read this, and I think everybody's going to be able to reach their own conclusions on this. Very dangerous, very sad conclusions. And we're going to be doing a lot of this on this channel. I know a lot of people keep up on these things, but most people don't have time to keep up on everything. And I'm going to be covering a lot of those little things that come in through the cracks that may be overlooked by so many people and give us a chance to talk about them. And so I do also welcome your comments. I welcome your input. Not only do I look forward to seeing it, but I'm sure other people will be able to learn from it and benefit from it as well. So you're in a place here. If you are a reversionist, a part of the American reversion, which means taking America back to the way it was supposed to be, then I hope that you'll be an active part of that. Okay, now let me start on this. I'm going to read this article. It says, pushed to the edge by the Capitol riot, people are reporting their family and friends to the FBI. Wow. Okay, it gets worse. When a mob, here's the beginning of the article, and it was, let's see, it came out today, January 16. It's by Hannah Knowles and Paulina, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this name, Villegas, something like that. I mean, no disrespect. I don't know Paulina. I just don't know how to pronounce that name. Okay, so anyway, they're the ones who wrote it, and it's from the Washington Post. When a mob stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, Leslie hoped that this would be her Trump-supporting parents' wake-up call. She hoped they were watching, maybe feeling ashamed. Then a friend called. "Do you know already?" the friend said, and Leslie wondered briefly if someone had died. The politically liberal 35-year-old cried about the screenshots from her mother's Facebook page, posts defending the pro-Trump crowds and suggesting that Leslie's mom made it at least to the Capitol steps. Then she reported her mom to the FBI. Because actions, she said, should have consequences. I think before I realized she was this far gone, there was a sense that perhaps there was some way to reconcile, said Leslie. It felt like a death, honestly. Leslie shared screenshots of text messages in which she shared her FBI tip submission complete page, and another friend recounted hearing that Leslie had reported her mother. Leslie and many others interviewed for this article spoke on the condition that their full name not be revealed, citing concerns about retaliation or further heightening tensions in their families. How about just shame? Sorry, that was my interjection. In relationships already strained or severed, last week's violent spectacle of democracy under siege, really? Do you recall celebrating the Boston Tea Party? Do you remember celebrating other things? Do we remember celebrating Tiananmen Square? Well, I could go on. Let me start again, and I'll try to keep my interjections out of this. In relationships already strained or severed, last week's violent spectacle of democracy under siege has pushed some people to take a drastic new step, warning law enforcement. Anguished Americans are turning in friends and family for their alleged involvement in the Capitol riots, contributing to more than 100,000 tips submitted to the FBI and playing a role in at least one high-profile arrest. For months, sometimes years, the informants, they say, have watched helplessly as loved ones embraced far-right ideology and latched onto conspiracy theories, from QAnon to viral video claims of a coronavirus pandemic. Extremism has thrived in the Trump era, and under pandemic lockdowns, experts say, with more people isolated at home and misinformation rampant online. Misinformation simply being another term for information other than the ones they want to shove down our throat. Sorry, another interjection on my part. Back to the article. Far-right extremism is not a small fringe worldview. It's not an insular cult that only reaches a few dozen or a few hundred people. It's a wide-ranging worldview embedded in American society, said Peter Simi, an associate professor of sociology at Chapman University who has studied far-right extremist groups and violence for more than 20 years. Increasingly, estranged friends and relatives told the Washington Post they were driven to law enforcement by their own politics, a sense of moral obligation, and a fear of what their loved ones could do next. Ooh. Does that bring back, y'all ever seen any old Nazi movies? They left me no choice because they were on such a destructive path, and I do worry about other people's safety as well as theirs, said a Texas woman who recounted learning through social media that family members were on the Capitol lawn. Apparently beyond the barriers that rioters toppled. Her husband said he can corroborate that she informed the FBI. Authorities say they have just started making arrests in the wake of the 4-hour insurrection attempt at the Capitol. Which sent lawmakers into the building, halted certification of the presidential vote, and left 5 people dead, including a police officer. There's a lot more in that information, and one of the people was killed by law enforcement. An unarmed person killed by law enforcement. Hundreds could eventually face charges. Is that Law enforcement officer, do you suppose one of them? Probably not. And people around the country are volunteering information. Reddit forums and Twitter threads urge users to turn in even those closest to them and comfort those who say they did. Some of these online spaces have become safe havens where people share their struggles with the radicalization of a loved one. Mm-hmm. Maybe being held accountable will do them some good, one Reddit user writes in a thread about reporting Capitol rioters, making sure to include the FBI's web form for tips. Elsewhere, someone notes that Ted Kaczynski, the serial terrorist known as the Unabomber, was turned in by his brother. Do you remember what Kaczynski's political leanings were? They weren't far right. They weren't even conservative. Neither were most of them. The FBI did not respond to questions about the sources of its Capitol riot tips, but one of their agents described a witness in the case of Larry Rendell Brock, a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel, who called in identifying herself as Brock's ex-wife. According to the FBI, Brock was photographed last week in the well of the Senate chamber with zip-tie handcuffs and a military patch recognized by the FBI's tipster, who explained that she was married to Brock for 18 years. The Post was unable to reach Brock, his relatives, or his public defender. You know how that is. You dial, and then after one ring, you hang up. Well, they didn't call me back. Some family members have stuck by those arrested, defending them to the media, and for others, contacting the FBI feels drastic. Waking up from a nap last Wednesday to see the Capitol breach on TV, Robin Sweet said she had a feeling that her father, Douglas Sweet, was there. She knew he went to the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, she said, and she has listened to him spout QAnon conspiracy theories. Now, just for the record, I am not a believer in QAnon. That's my opinion, okay? Speaking of child pedophile rings and chemical compounds supposedly extracted from the young captive's blood. Okay, see how they're well, I'll be quiet. By the time family located him, Robin said, her father was already arrested. She says she would not have contacted law enforcement anyway since she does not believe her father harmed anyone. But she says she has heard from a large community of people who are also mourning their own relatives' descent into conspiracy. Can you think of another group that was called conspirators? They were called the Founders, weren't they? Our founding fathers and their support. And who say that if they were in her shoes, they would report. I have had a lot of people around the world reaching out to me and saying they feel like they've lost their parents to this radical Trumpism. They feel like they don't have a family anymore. The Post could not reach her father, and it is not clear if he has a lawyer. Posting on Facebook after his arrest, Douglas Sweet dismissed his unlawful entry charge as the equivalent of a ticket. Simi argued, remember that's the guy that studied far right for 20 years, that while right-wing extremism has been building and ignored for decades, it has gained greater force during the Trump administration, fomented not only by the president, but other federal officials as well. This has brought political extremism in America to unprecedented levels, Simi said. That means he needs more money to study it. Adding, we really are in uncharted territory. I guess they don't consider other extremism that has really caused damage in our country to be extremist. Oh, yes, I forgot. That was a peaceful demonstration for justice. The coronavirus pandemic has proved a terrible recipe for extremism, Simi said. Then came the Capitol riots. What we saw on the 6th is the culmination of something that has been burning and building for quite some time. And in that sense, what happened was quite predictable, he said. The Texas woman who says 2 of her relatives were on the Capitol lawn also described radicalization long in the making. They have closed themselves off from the rest of society. Everybody else is the enemy, she said of her relatives. One family member has argued for a white ethnic state and the separation of races. She said, Well, I'll tell you what. Right now, I do know people who have advocated for a separation of the races, and they are not white. It's almost like a cult, she said. They all sit around and share conspiracy theories that the media is lying to them. They don't want to believe any kind of fact outside their circle. Fact meaning, of course, what the media reports. Stunned after learning they were at the Capitol last week, she slept on the issue and then tried to discuss it with other family members. The woman said they brushed her off, echoing claims of widespread voting fraud. Well, I wonder, no, I'm sure she didn't take that as, other people think this too. Maybe I should revisit what I feel. They said I was being ridiculous and overreacting. Yeah. That response helped push her to report to the FBI. I felt I had to do something because it seemed like no one else in their immediate circle was going to talk to them, she said. Another woman said she informed the FBI about a former friend, estranged because of her increasingly radical politics. Radical politics, probably like men and women should use their own bathrooms, or nuclear families are good, stuff like that. Who appears in video close to the overrun Capitol, shouting toward the police, "Traitor, traitor, traitor." The ex-friend, a California attorney named Lee Dundas, also posted video of herself telling a crowd the day before the Capitol chaos that we would be well within our rights to take traitorous Americans out back and shoot them or hanging. Okay, now I've read that because that was a part of the article. I do not believe in that, and I don't advocate any kind of violence at this time. And I also ask that any commenters on here refrain from making any mention of violence against any person, group of people, government entity, anything. That's not what this is about. We are in a time of trying to reverse the damage that's been done to our country through winning back hearts and minds, through talking, through discussing, through organizing, and through political power. Okay, so let me get back to this. That's just a caution against violence. The woman shared screenshots of a group chat where she said she reported Dundas to the FBI, and her daughter also corroborated that her mother notified law enforcement. Dundas did not respond Friday to calls and emails. She wrote on Facebook last week that the police were the aggressors on January 6th and blamed Antifa thugs inside the building. The FBI has said it does not believe Antifa was responsible for the day's violence. The FBI, who we have learned we can trust so much. Dundas's former friend said that she initially felt some hesitation about contacting the FBI, but Dundas's words erased all of the great things we did together and the wonderful things she did for me. Interesting. So here was a woman who did wonderful things for this person, and this person turned her in. Speaks volumes, doesn't it, as to the personal integrity of these people? What she said about killing people, she was talking about me. Well, she wasn't. Well, okay. So that is the first installment of our return to American reversion. I was talking to a neighbor just last week, and he's an executive in a major corporation, and asked him about his family. They had all had some of this COVID, and asked how they were doing, and he told me, and then he asked me what I thought might be coming, and he kind of asked me in a furtive way. Now, these are extremely conservative people. They are extremely Christian people. But he kind of furtively, as he looked around, asked me, what I thought might be coming up, what I thought of the Capitol riots. And I told him what I thought. And he said, "That's what I said." And then he looked around again. He says, we have to be, he says, we were watching it on TV. That's what he said. We were watching that on TV, and I said that I thought that these were Antifa going in there. And he says, and that, he says, Peggy, that's not her name, his daughter, in the last few years, college grad and all that, which explains a lot. And he says, we have to be careful what we see around her. She's very sensitive to those sort of stuff. And he looked around again. He actually lowered his voice in his own front yard. And he said, she has great concerns about our support for Trump. Families are not being turned against each other right now. They have been turned against each other for years. They have been turned against each other by the school system, by the media, by government programs, and especially by the universities and colleges. I don't know how many people I know who have said, we raised our kids to be good, solid citizens, conservative in outlook and belief, and they went away to college and they came back liberals. We're going to talk about that more on a future one. But this is such concern. This takes our country to a whole new level, to where the informants are within the family. Okay. I'm going to sign off with that now. Let you all think about it. Let you all comment, because we need to be discussing this again. Please refrain from any mention of violence. That's not what we're about here. We are about taking our country back to where it was supposed to be, and building an American reversion. And America does need a reversion, and it needs you to be a part of it. So please, like I asked before, like this video, subscribe, please. Hit the bell so you get notifications of upcoming videos, and tell your friends. Please pass this around to as many people as you think is appropriate, and I'll get back to you next time. Have a good day, and God bless you. Bye-bye.